Hey, what's up everyone? Shamrocked here with a dungeon guide. This is for Siege of Boralus on a +12, and it's using the Farseer hero tree. So personally, I have been a huge fan of both the Farseer and the Totemic hero trees. I feel like I've learned how to play both. I could probably do most keys with either tree, no problem. So with that being said, Siege of Boralus, I actually think Farseer is the better tree. At least for a +12, probably a +13, higher than that, to be determined. But basically, the main reason I feel like Farseer is the better tree is there's a lot of spot healing. Like I feel like the majority of dangerous damage in this dungeon is not AoE healing. It's not about like getting through big burst damage windows. It's really about spot healing and making sure that nobody is dying to any one specific damage event. And that is especially true with the last boss and how the dispels work, which we will go over when we get there. So with that being said, let's just jump into the talents that we used for this dungeon. Specifically, I'm just going to go over the important ones that I would take for this dungeon on both the left and the right side. I don't think I would really go over everything. I have other guides on my channel if you're interested on the intricate synergies between the talents for each hero tree and all that stuff. So go check those out if you're interested. So looking on the left side of the tree, the class tree, there are four specific things that I would advise taking for this dungeon. First is your Curse Dispel, Improved Purify Spirit. Improved Purify Spirit is going to help you with the Curse Blade ads, which is in the area after the first boss, I believe. They put a nasty curse on the tank that can very easily lead to their death if you're not careful. It's a stacking debuff, so just make sure that you have this so that you can decurse the tank. If you have other classes in your group, like a Shaman or a Mage that can decurse, you can forego this talent if they're able to. You only need one decurse. You don't need a bunch. Next, we have Tremor Totem. This is not necessary, however, it does help, especially in like the case of something going wrong. The big Crusher ads, I'm not sure what they're called, but the big giants that are in the hallway after the second boss, in like the monkey corridor where all the bananas are, they do a fear, and if anybody's caught in it, it's just a really dangerous section, which once again, we'll see when we get there. So I advise bringing Tremor Totem just in case for that section. Next, we have Poison Cleansing Totem. The section before the giant boss, which is the third boss, has some guys that will put poison on the tank. Just like the stacking curse I was just talking about, it can be very dangerous. So it is advisable to have at least someone who can dispel poison. If there's somebody else in the group who can do this, you don't need to take this talent. Only one is required, but I do advise. Next, I actually don't have a talented here, but I am going to mention Purge. There is a cast, I believe it's called like Watertight Shell or something like that the Wave Shapers do. And if that cast goes off, they basically put, it's like a purgeable shield on one of their allies. And then I believe after a certain amount of time, or if somebody attacks it, it explodes and it stuns everyone in the group, which can be pretty deadly. So either make sure that cast does not get off, or make sure someone in your group has Purge just in case. Usually I play with like a mage or a demon hunter or somebody else who can purge other shamans, whatever. So that's why I don't have it talented, but just make sure if nobody else in the group can do it, it is a good choice to maybe have this just in case. And then lastly, Windrush Totem. I think Windrush Totem is really important for the first boss. It's especially if somebody gets targeted who maybe doesn't have a lot of movement speed, or if they get targeted multiple times in a row. It's just going to allow you to give them a little speed boost, or yourself a little speed boost, not only to run away from the boss easier, but also to set up the boss in a good spot so that he gets, so that he hits a bomb in a timely manner before he hooks everyone and resets and doesn't hit the bomb, which is very annoying. And we will go over that when we get to the first boss. Looking at the right side, the only talent of mention that I want to say here is Master of the Elements. This is like I said, this is a dungeon where spot healing is very important, especially and Farseer. One of Farseer's main strengths is spot healing, really big, easy single target heals. So Master of the Elements is only going to compound that and make that easier. And then yeah, I think that's it. I play Unleash Life for Farseer. Once again, that kind of goes into the talking about the Farseer tree, which I do have a video on. But yeah, for this dungeon and pretty much every dungeon I play Farseer on, I will use Unleash Life as my ancestor summoning tool in addition to Ancestral Swiftness. Also, you'll notice I take Primordial Wave. I think depending on your playstyle and your preference and what you like, you can take Primordial Wave or you can take Downpour. Both of them are useful for their own reasons. I think for Siege specifically, once you get to a high enough key, you have to worry about the giant boss, the third boss, one-shotting you with the Breakwater mechanic. in which case you might want to take Downpour just for the extra health, but you'd kind of have to coordinate your group standing in there, and you'd have to be very careful with your timings. But definitely a good option over P-Wave if necessary. But for me, I didn't need the extra health increase from Downpour, and I feel like P-Wave is easier to use. Just throw it a key in general, and I feel like you get more value out of it than Downpour, just because for Farseer you only have 6 seconds to use Downpour, so it's a little bit trickier to use. Okay, and with that out of the way, let's actually jump into the dungeon itself. Okay, so here we go. Just something to mention, if you're running this queue on a +12 or higher, hopefully you're using Discord. It's just a lot easier to coordinate everything. But I do advise that yourself or somebody else who's good at it call kicks throughout this dungeon. It's very important that none of the Wave Shaper bolts get off, just because of the nature of how punishing +12 keys are and higher. At the moment, it's very important that no kicks get off. They will probably one-shot. Not necessarily one-shot from full health, but because, as you can see, there's so much other damage going on, any kick going off is likely going to kill somebody. All right, so this first pack here, we pull everything in. We don't lust, actually. We save lust for the second pull. That being said, your DPS should still be using cooldowns here just to make sure this pack dies in a timely manner, and then lust will carry the next pack. Here you want to make sure you're interrupting the Wave Shapers. The fire bombs are just going to be targeting random people and shooting them. You can use knockups or stuns to stop them, but in general, it is going to hurt a lot, as you can see. So every time they target someone, just be ready to spot heal them. In addition, you're going to have the enforcers who are going to do the shattering bellow, or whatever it's called. It's basically a large shout that's going to do a massive amount of damage to the entire group. On a 12, it's doing like 80%, 70 to 80% of HP. So in addition, with all the other abilities that are going on, it's very important that you're keeping everybody topped up here. For the second pull, we use Lust, and then we're going to get a nasty overlap here with the Raider hooking everybody in, which is going to do damage, and then the Enforcer is going to bellow right after. So this is where I would use something like Spirit Link, and then I'd probably partner it with Ancestral Guidance or maybe Ascendance, as you can see, which I've just done here, just to keep the group nice and healthy during this. Another strategy that you can do that we actually didn't, because we didn't realize until running this at a later time, you can kind of tank the Enforcer and the Raider kind of on the corner, and then you can actually LOS the hooks and the shouts just around this little ledge here. But anyways, with that, you'll see with the ability tracker on the top left, the way to play Farseer is actually pretty simple, at least using my build. It's really optimizing the use of the Flow of the Tides talent, which is basically every time you target somebody with Chain Heal who has a Riptide on them, the Chain Heal will consume the Riptide, but also be 30% stronger on everybody it hits, which is pretty incredible. And the nature of Farseer, especially having 3 Riptide charges, once again with the build that I'm using, it basically means you have unlimited ammo to power up every single Chain Heal that you send out, which is pretty incredible. And when that chain heal is powered up by High Tide, it's amazing. It does an insane amount of healing on the entire group. And then in addition to that, you can also power up the chain heal with Unleash Life and Ancestral Swiftness. So if you factor in all of those buffs, like if you have Ancestral Swiftness, Unleash Life, High Tide, and you're using Flow of the Tides, your chain heal is basically going to top up the entire group. And if you have Cloudburst down while you do that, it's just going to make your Cloudburst nice and juicy as well. But yeah, so going back to the gameplay of Farseer, you're going to see I'm basically keeping Unleash Life on cooldown. And that's going to make it so I have one Ancestor the entire time, pretty much 100% uptime, which is great. It's just like a little boost to every single one of your heals. But you can also use Ancestral Swiftness to create what I call a 2 Ancestor window. And once again, if that doesn't sound familiar to you or you're a little bit confused on how Farseer works, I do have an entire video on using the Farseer tree. But anyways, when you activate that 2 Farseer window using Ancestral Swiftness, it's just going to make all of your healing a lot more powerful for about 8 seconds, which is really nice. But that being said, one of the intricacies of Farseer is you don't want to hold Ancestral Swiftness too long, and you also don't want to you don't want to have someone die just because you're holding it, in the sense that if you need a quick instant heal to save somebody, much in the same way you would use Nature's Swiftness with the Totemic Tree or previous expansions, don't save Ancestral Swiftness. Like, just use it, save the person, and then figure it out later, right? Because the way keys work now, if you're running on a +8 or higher, 1 death is equal to 15 seconds, and if you have a death on a pack like this, it's like a domino effect. The mobs are going to last longer, you're going to have less kicks, less CCs, whatever, and it's going to lead to more people dying. And it's actually so crazy. Like, if you have 3 people die die on a single pull, you've just lost 45 seconds of your key, in addition to losing the DPS that they would have done, and in addition to the time it takes them to run back or to res them. So deaths right now, any death in a +8 or higher key is so detrimental to your overall timer and your ability to time a dungeon. So it's imperative that you use every single tool you have in your kit to keep every single person alive as long as possible, even if that means deviating from what you may have planned in your mind to handle certain damage events. All right, so going into this boss, I actually hate this boss. I think it's very stressful. The little ads are going to come out at different health percentage points, and they're just going to shoot people. It's important that your tank sort of tanks the ads close to the boss, but not all the time, because the ads also have frontals. So if the boss hooks people in, and one of the ads frontals or whatever, then you can just immediately die there. So it's a really tricky balance, but you don't want the ads to pile up as well. So what we found the best way to do it is when the boss is stunned from one of the bombs, that's when the tank would bring the ads on top of him, and we would just sort of cleave the ads down. But obviously you want to be focusing the majority of your damage on the boss during those bomb phases, because he is taking amplified damage. In terms of aiming the boss, so when the bombs come down, I don't like the way they designed this, because it's really hard to it's not very intuitive. There's going to be a ton of circles. The circles that look empty are the ones that drop bombs, while the circles that have this sort of swirly shimmering effect are actually just AoE effects that will kill you. So anyways, every time the bombs drop, so here actually you can see there's the empty circle and the swirly circle. The empty circle is the one that's going to drop the bomb. So in between bomb phases, he's going to target people and he's going to chase them. It's the person he's chasing, it's their responsibility to lead him into a bomb. So this fight really is all about positioning. It's about thinking where you are, where the boss needs to be, and how to get him there, right? The unfortunate thing about this boss is you can get kind of trolled by the bomb placement, and additionally, the ads that the boss summon can also attack the bombs or hit the bombs, like what literally just happened right there as I said it, and then you have less bombs to hit the boss with. So it's just a really messy fight. I don't think that they designed this. I really like the concept of it. I think it's a cool idea. I just don't think the execution is quite there. There's too many things that can go wrong that are a little bit out of your control, mainly being the bomb placement. I think what they could have done to make this boss a little bit more fair is to have the bombs spawn in the same spot every single sequence, just so that you can plan to have the boss in the right position before the bombs actually come out. But anyways, that being said, he's more than doable. As you just saw, we killed him. We did have someone die there, which, like I said, really unfortunate because we lost 15 seconds, but it's okay. It's all good. The one nice thing about this boss is that he is a very short boss because of the damage amp phases. So as long as you do those bombs correctly, you're probably killing him between 1.5 and 2.5 minutes. Okay, going into this pack after the boss, this is a tough pack. You're going to get the curse blades, putting curses on the tank, as well as the singing steel that the shredders do. The shredders, the singing steel debuff that they put on the tank is cauterizable, so if you have an evoker in the group, I highly recommend you do that. Otherwise, make sure you're paying very close attention to your tank and healing them as needed, because those singing steel dots do really, really hurt. In addition to that, you're also going to have the charges from the big guys on the horses. I think they're called commanders. It's called the Azerite charge. You can see it happening on our paladin here. It is important that anybody who gets targeted with that uses a defensive on a +12 or higher, because it will very close to one-shot them. It'll probably do 80 to 90% of their health with no defensives, and then it puts a dot on them as well. So the dot can be what kills them if the charge doesn't. So once again, important to use a defensive if you have one. Remember, as a shaman, you have Astral Shift as well as a Stone Bulwark Totem. So just keep those handy. Make sure that they are on keybinds that are easy for you to access at a moment's notice. You should also have your health pot. It's the Elgari health potion. Very, very useful. It will pretty much top you up. It's a powerful health potion, so just make sure you have that handy as well, because that will help you in a pinch. But yeah, anyways, we're just making our way through these packs. It's very important, just like I said at the beginning, to make sure the wave shapers be interrupted. You want to be careful with the raiders. They can hook you in, especially if an Azerite charge is happening at the same time, because people can all get hooked into one of those big circles that the commander does, and that is pretty much a wipe. So it's tricky. That's the whole thing with this dungeon, is there's so many crazy overlaps that can happen if you're not careful, and if your tanks aren't pulling correctly. So it's very important just to be aware of what interactions you want to avoid, and just really be liberal with your cooldowns. Like there's no reason to be holding Spirit Link, Ancestral Guidance, Ascendance, or Healing Tide. You don't really need any for the bosses, but I mean, yeah, you kind of do for the next boss, but you can use stuff during the trash packs, and because of our new and improved cooldowns that reduce the cooldown of Healing Tide and Ascendance, and the fact that Ancestral Guidance is already on a short cooldown, you can use all of your cooldowns pretty liberally and know that they'll still be up when you need them getting into a boss fight. The only cooldown that still has the full 3-minute duration pretty much is Spirit Link Totem, so that's the only one I would say you maybe want to be careful with, but at the same time, Spirit Link Totem is one of our top O ship buttons, right? Like if the group all of a sudden, goes down to 10% unexpectedly, or even one person goes down really low and is about to die, you can just, use Spirit Link as an oh no button, and that will save the group pretty much. So yeah, be careful with Spirit Link. You don't want to screw yourself over later when you know you need it, but at the same time, if the choice is to save the group or have deaths, I personally do what you need to do to save the group now and figure out what you need to do later for what you were planning to do, if that makes sense, right? You can always work on the fly and figure stuff out. So one mistake I'm doing here is I'm not really dispelling the tank right away from that Curse Blade. Thankfully, this tank is really good, so just be careful. If you see that curse go out, try to dispel it right away. But also, it's a little bit of a game of triage, right? Because everything in this dungeon hurts. You don't want, like I said, anybody to die unexpectedly. So if you need to make the executive decision and heal who is in the most immediate danger at the time. Okay, as you can see, our lust timer is coming up, so we lusted the second pull. We're now going to lust this pull before the second boss. The reason you don't really want to lust the second boss is because you do lose a little bit of uptime just based on how the boss works. She does have an intermission phase where she jumps away onto a boat, so you don't get huge value out of lust on her. So this pack is a very scary pack. There's a lot of stuff happening. There's a lot of mobs, so this is a great opportunity to just use your second lust, get it on cooldown, and then you should be able to get 2 more in the dungeon if you're on time. So we actually don't really get our last one. It happens at the very end of the dungeon, pretty much right as the last boss is dying. And the reason is because we've already had 3 deaths so far. Like I said, that's 45 seconds. And so our lust timer is very, very tight at the moment in order to get, the 4 lusts that we wanted to. But that's okay. As you see, we timed the key anyway, so it's not super awful. Okay, obviously for this pack, as you can see, we're still avoiding the Azurite charges. The spotter is going to be targeting people and putting circles on the ground, and then the one guy is going to have like a big giant frontal that you need to avoid. All right, going into Dread Captain Lockwood. This boss is not as scary as it looks. All you have to do is make sure you're planning for the damage phases. Also a pro tip, so the most dangerous thing about this boss is the gut shot ability. So if there's nobody in melee range of her, she will use gut shot on a random player, and it's like this massive bleed that really, really hurts. And basically the way to keep her from jumping away and doing that is to put a snare on her, right? Somebody needs to be slowing her down. Thankfully, Shamans have the perfect tool for that. You want to keep Earthbind on her at all times as much as you can. And if you have a Frost DK in the group or a Frost Mage, they'll also be able to help out as well. Okay, but sorry, I know this is going a bit fast, but the Fiery Ricochet. So what I want to do as a Farseer to handle the Fiery Ricochet is I'm putting Riptide on the entire group before it's coming out. I'm putting my Cloudburst Totem down. I have Unleash Life on cooldown for that one Ancestor. And then as soon as Fiery Ricochet comes out, I am using my Ancestral Swiftness to summon my second Ancestor, and then I'm popping a cooldown to help out with the damage. So in that first phase, I used Ancestral Guidance as well as Ascendance for the 2 Fiery Ricochets. And just a reminder, if you need to sort of slow it down and see what I'm doing, I do have an ability tracker on the top left that is sort of showing what I'm casting, so you can always just rewind and sort of check out the sequences I'm doing. So one more thing for Fiery Ricochet is you can actually use your Thunderstorm Knockup, and it'll delay the Fiery Ricochet, like the CC for some reason works on her. So if she's using Fiery Ricochet at a wrong time, or you want to buy yourself a second, I find it useful to just use your Knockup and delay it. What's also nice is really every phase you should only be getting 2 Fiery Ricochets unless your DPS is a little bit low, in which case you'll get a third. But if you use your Thundershock Knockup to delay it by a second or 2, and that goes for anybody else in the group as well, you actually can offset it a little bit so that it just gives you a couple of seconds more to push her before the third Fire Ricochet goes out in any phase, which is really nice. But as I said before, that time I used Healing Tide and Spirit Link, and then going into the third and final phase after the second intermission, for the last Fiery Ricochets, I have Ancestral Guidance and Ascendance backup as well. That being said, you actually don't really need the throughput cooldowns to get through that. If you're smart with your Riptides and your 2 Ancestor windows and your Flow of the Tide chain heals, as well as Cloudburst Totem and having High Tide available, you can actually heal through all of these damage abilities without using a cooldown. However, we have the cooldowns available. Why not use them? Make our lives a little bit easier. Okay, as you can see, Ancestral Guidance, once again, just using a throughput cooldown to help me get through this. And as I've explained in several other videos, if you have Cloudburst down while you're using Ancestral Guidance, it's going to give it a nice little pop at the end. And you'll see there, that was really dumb of me actually. I put APT down just because I saw it on cooldown and I was like, wow, I don't think I've used this at all this dungeon yet. So I felt bad, but it ended up being a good thing, because if you notice right there, the tank was not able to be in range because of the circles on the ground. So 2 or 3 of us got the gut shot ability there, which is, like I said, a nasty bleed, especially if it's happening during Fire Ricochet, which it was. So that APT turned out to be a pro gamer move, even though I put it down for absolutely no reason. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes you hold a cooldown and you die, and sometimes you put it down for no reason and you live. So once again, I say it all the time, just be liberal with your cooldowns. There's no sense in saving things if people are going to die or whatever. Okay, this next hallway used to be very, very scary for me. It's probably one of my least favorite hallways in all the dungeons. One of the main reasons why I didn't like this dungeon. However, once I learned that if your tank can put them in a good position, you can actually just LOS all of the slams that the big dudes do, and that will just massively reduce the amount of damage that the group is taking for anyone who can avoid the slam. Very important here, the Tempest adds cannot have that Choking Waters cast go off. It's going to target someone and basically drown them, and they will die if they don't get dispelled. So if it goes on anybody else, it's no big deal, you can just dispel them. But if they happens to choose you, that is death for you, and then likely death for the group because they need you to be healing them. In addition, what makes this hallway very annoying are the bananas on the ground. They're a little bit hard to see, especially if another ability is happening. It sometimes covers them up. There's lots of trees in the way, as you can see. Love having a dungeon where I can't say anything because of the trees. It's really great design. But yeah, so just be careful where you're stepping. If you do step on a banana, don't get mad. Just move on with your life. All right, and so you're just going to move through these packs one by one. Once again, very important, you're getting as many kicks as you possibly can. The Tempest Choking Waters is the only one that needs to be kicked, but everything else you can kick will just help out with general damage. The Tempest is going to throw water bolts at people. Once again, it can definitely kill somebody if it's happening at the same time as a slam or other ability. As you can see, the slams they hurt a lot, very much painful. So just yeah, make sure you're spot healing. And like I said, that's one of the reasons why I really love Farseer for this dungeon, is because you can, if anybody's in immediate danger, you can just pop an Ancestral Swiftness and use a Healing Surge, especially if you're weaving in moats, and it's just going to, it literally will top them from 1% HP to 100% HP, which is amazing. Also, like I mentioned earlier at the beginning, Tremor Totem is very useful here, not just because you can use it in the case of emergency, in case somebody gets feared when they don't mean to, but like this right here where we were all kind of stuck on the fence, I basically communicated to my group in Discord, hey, don't worry about moving, I have Tremor, I'm going to drop it, and then the fear actually doesn't do any damage, so people can just stand there and not have to worry about running out or being out of position or whatever. So it can be very helpful for your group. Okay, we're on to our third and final Demolisher. That's the guy's name, so the Demolisher. And once again, we're going to try and LOS if we can. I feel like I just got rescued out of my LOS spot, but that's okay. This third Crusher is probably the hardest to LOS, like line of sight, just because there's not a whole lot of corners to use. So if there's any good spot to use a cooldown and keep the group healthy, this is probably one of them. And as you can see, I'm using Spirit Link right here. Everybody's going to get in, and we're going to get in for that nice sweet DR, and then the tank is going to lend us his HP and keep us all alive there. And I hope, like I said, as you've been watching, like, I can't stress this enough. I know I've mentioned it like 5 times, but just like use your cooldowns. Like you can see, like I basically always have at least one cooldown on like being used, or on like the cooldown that I can't use it anymore, just because I'm using them so often. you know, unless you're trying to challenge yourself and see if you can do things, you know, without using cooldowns, there's no reason to hold. We have so many good cooldowns now. Like we've been given the gift of lots of cooldowns with such low timers for them to come back up. So, you know, make sure you utilize them. Use that gift before it gets taken away from us. So we do invis this last spotter pack. You don't have to. It is very annoying to kill, but once again, it is killable, so you don't have to worry about it too much. We're going into our last section here. Our timer is looking pretty good. Right now, we're just discussing about how we probably will have time if we don't have any more deaths. So once again, because the deaths are so punishing, it really can make or break the key, even just a few of them. So with this pack here, once again, you're going to be watching the charges. There is a raider and a commander here, which is dangerous because you can get an overlap where you get hooked in while a charge is happening. So just make sure you're sort of saving a personal for, you know, in the event that that happens, and that you're just being careful about where you're standing and where you're going. And once again, use that Farseer spot healing. If you see somebody getting targeted with the charge, be ready to pump everything you got into them, because it will likely bring them down to very low HP, especially if they don't have a personal ready. And in addition to that, don't be afraid to swap around your Earth Shield here as well. So if you notice the charge going on somebody who's maybe a little bit squishier in your group, feel free to move the Earth Shield off of your tank and onto that player, the DPS player, just to help them with the damage a tiny bit. Okay, so to save a little bit of time on these packs, if you guys are feeling gutsy, all you have to do is kill or CC a wave speaker, and then you can actually double these guys up. So I believe we kill this wave speaker, and then we go into the other pack, or it's possible that we double up the next 2 packs. So really for this entire area here, don't be afraid to double up as long as you're, you know, focusing one caster down so that you don't have 2 casters up at the same time. Because the commanders do require a kick for this bolstering shout. So it's very important that you don't pull too many casters, because you will, you know, it's likely someone's going to die and a cast is going to get off if you're dealing with too many kicks. We also have Lust coming up here, and we want to use it right away so that we have it at the very end of the dungeon. Like I said, our Lust timer is already kind of messed up just because of the deaths, which is really, you know, it's kind of a shame that it works out that way. But anyways, we're going to use it here, and I believe we're going to have this carry over into the final pack. And you'll see some routes don't actually kill this final pack that we're about to go to. You can leave it up while you fight the giant. However, in my opinion, leaving a pack up that close to a boss fight is very dangerous, just because, you know, people can walk into it or whatever. So I'm actually appreciative of us killing that. Also, you'll see we had a watertight shell go off there. I wasn't able to find the guy and purge him in time, so it basically just stunned the group for a few seconds, which is very bad, but thankfully it was happening well, like nothing else was happening. So all right, and you'll see here, this last pack is very scary. It's actually why most people skip it. So once again, don't be afraid to use cooldowns. This boss coming up, you actually don't need any cooldowns. Cooldowns are just going to help you out. This boss seems scary in theory, but he's probably one of the easiest as long as you don't get one shot, right? Because you have so much time in between damage events to top up the group and get into position. And like I said at the very beginning, if you are worried about one-shots, or if that's, you know, something that your group is having issues with, that's when you would probably spec into something like Downpour and then coordinate having everybody stand in your healing rain / Downpour right before each of the breakwater mechanics. All right, the key to this boss is baiting the breakwaters away from the fountain, just like we did there. You want to give your group lots of space to be able to maneuver around these fountain when the wave walls come out. But other than that, this boss is honestly kind of boring. There's not really much happening. And you can see, like, you literally have like 30 seconds in between each breakwater to top the group. So you could probably get through this entire fight without using any cooldowns. However, there's no point. Once again, there's no point in holding your cooldowns. You're going to have them all up for the next boss anyways. So just use them as needed to heal your group. Something very important here, you don't have to be right up against the statue to dodge the waves. You can be like far away from it, and it's actually important. So I was trying to communicate to our group here, like in Discord while this was happening. While the waves are coming, stand far away from the fountain to bait the breakwater that happens right after, which are, you know, the circles on the ground, just to give yourself more, you know, more room in the future when you need to do the next wall of waves, or yeah, wall of waves, whatever it's called. So like right there, like those baits are totally fine. But the bait coming out of the last phase was not great, because as you can see, there are circles that are like directly up against the statue, which is no bueno. All right, so first wave, doesn't matter where you stand as long as you're behind the statue, because there's no circles coming out. Second wave, you want to be far away from the statue, but on that side. So I dodge the waves, and then we're baiting the breakwater away from the statue. Perfect. That's exactly what we want to see every single time there. Also very important, because we have Ancestral Vigor, which you absolutely should be talented in, which puts 10% HP increase on the group with your standard healing, including Chain Heal. Make sure you're using Chain Heal to get Ancestral Vigor on the entire group before each breakwater. And that will just help your group live a little bit there. Yeah, actually, as far as this boss goes and pushing higher and higher keys, Shamans probably have one of the best kits. Just because when you get to the point where you do need to utilize Downpour, having that extra 10% HP on demand, and the ability spaced out enough that you can use Downpour every single time if you're playing Farseer for every breakwater mechanic, it's super OP. It's really, really nice, and I'm excited to get to the point where we are getting one shot by this guy, because it's going to make Resto Shaman look amazing. Because it's not something that other healers are going to be able to do, because it's not even a question of healing and throughput and being able to keep the group topped up. It's about adding extra HP to the group, right? Which really the only other healer that can do that that I know of anyways, on demand and with decent uptime enough to make a difference would be having a priest with their fort buff. Right, this boss does have a lot of HP, unfortunately. It's a boss that I feel like shouldn't. I mean, I get it. He's a big giant, so obviously he's going to be pretty tanky and beefy. But at the same time, this is a boss where it's the same mechanic over and over and over again. Like, it's not hard. And I feel like the bosses that are like that should be just nice and short, right? Because it's really just about surviving these one-shot mechanics. And once you've proved you can do that, I don't think you need to do it for 5 minutes. It's kind of like beating a dead horse, but whatever. I assume maybe he'll get nerfed in the future in terms of his HP value. All right, so we're going into the last boss, which is probably the most stressful part of the key, other than maybe the very first area. Very important, nobody dies here. You can actually go around the side, as you can see my friends are doing, or you can just go through the middle. It doesn't matter, just be safe. All right, so name of the game here is to stay spread the entire time. Every single person in the group needs to be spread out. Because of the circles that the Putrid Waters, the debuff that you can see is put on myself here, when you dispel that, anybody in the circle will get sent flying away, which can be extremely detrimental on this boss and can result in a death. So yeah, there's two mechanics on this boss that you need to worry about. One is the Putrid Waters, which is going to happen like every 10 to 15 seconds. It's going to choose 2 people in the group and put a very nasty dot on them. And when that dot gets dispelled, anybody who's in the circle that's around them will get sent flying, as I just explained. So in addition to that, you're going to have the Demolishing Tentacle on each phase, and that is going to do a slam mechanic, which just does like a big amount of AoE damage to the entire group. So when you put those two mechanics together, the slam plus the dot can really hurt, especially because the dot, when it first goes out, is going to chunk people for usually about 80 to 90% of their health, maybe a little bit less if they have some sort of defensive rolling. So a dot plus a slam is basically where you're going to have the most of your deaths on this fight. So it's imperative that your group focuses the Demolishing Tentacles down first, just to remove those slams. If you're tight on time for this dungeon, you're really worried about the timer, you can have the group split up just to make it a little bit faster, so you're killing the tentacles at the same time, but then you run the risk of danger by having more slams out. So it's really a trade-off that you have to make. And one thing I don't like about this fight is you can high roll or low roll with who gets the dispels. And what I mean by that is the dispel is able to target the tank, like the Putrid Waters, and it does like nothing to the tank, right? So if you get lucky and your tank gets targeted every single time, it makes the fight so much easier than compared to if like a healer and a DPS get it every single time. So we got somewhat lucky here. As you can see right now, it hasn't really targeted the tank yet, but I think towards the end of the fight, it targets the tank a lot. Also, we had one death there, which is really unfortunate just because our timer is running down. It's very tight at this time. And that's because we had a slam with the dot. And if you rewind, I was worried about moving into that circle I couldn't dispel because me and the evoker were kind of moving together. So it was just really kind of unfortunate how that worked out. But that's okay. We B-res and we move on. And once again, as you can see, I'm using my cooldowns pretty liberally. I've already used Ancestral Guidance at the very beginning. I've used Healing Tide, and I've used Spirit Link. And once again, because our cooldowns are so short now, you know, if you're using them throughout the fight, you're going to get them towards the end again, which is very nice. All right, like I said, here's where I think we start to get lucky, and the tank sort of gets it every time, which is really nice. But we also, if you're running with a Death Knight, they can pre-AMS, and if it targets them, they won't get hit, which is really nice. So any sort of immunities like that will help. Pallies can also bop it or whatever they have. And then also, if you're in communication, you know, triage, in the sense that if you know somebody has a defensive or is a tank of your class, don't dispel them first. You should always be dispelling the person who's in the most danger. So in our group, it's the Evoker, because he's probably the squishiest out of all our classes, and with the least effective defensives for this kind of mechanic. So whenever I see the Evoker getting it, I'm just ready to dispel him right away, just like that. Also very important, as you see, whoever's doing the cannon mechanic can get targeted by Putrid Waters, so you can't really run ahead with your group. You sort of need to wait behind a bit just in case that person who's firing their cannon gets targeted, so that you can dispel them and they don't die while they're trying to run and catch up to the group. All right, we're on the last platform here. This is by far the most dangerous platform, so if you do, like in an ideal world, if you have Lust available, this is where you would use it. Just to get, once you get this Demolishing Tentacle down, you're pretty much in the clear. But this platform is just so hard because those circles on the ground just cover the entire thing. There's actually a safe spot kind of up on the stairs, which you'll see I go to after this tentacle dies. However, you do have to be careful because your group members can be LOS'd from you, which is what happened. And we actually have one more death, which almost cost us the key. And you'll see it's because I was unable to dispel the Evoker, because he was around the corner and I was on the stairs, and I just, you know, I couldn't reach him. But thankfully, once you get that first tentacle down, right now it's really just as long as nobody else dies to the dot and nobody dies to the swirls on the ground, you should be in the clear. All right, so as you can see right there, I was LOS'd. I couldn't do anything with the with my Evoker. I couldn't dispel him as fast as I wanted to, just because he was around that corner there. So be super careful if you're standing on the stairs that doesn't happen to you. But as you can see, we're good here. We're actually sweating a little bit because even though the tentacle's about to die with 20 seconds left, you still have to activate the cannon, which takes like 5 seconds or so. So here we go. We time the key with 10 seconds left, 9, 8 seconds left. Feels great. Those are, you know, the buzzer beaters that really get your adrenaline going, which is awesome. But yeah, so that's Siege of Boralus. This is actually, I don't think this is a hard key in the sense that, like, numbers wise it's doable. Like the throughput that's needed to keep up is fine. It's just the overlaps. Like this can be such a dangerous key because depending on who gets what ability and at what time, the overlaps for everything are just, they can be really punishing. But once again, very doable as you saw. So I hope this guide helped you out, and stay tuned for more.